of the Albany County Commissioners. The first item on the agenda is call to order and roll call. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, Commissioner Gozar.
Here.
Commissioner Hoff.
Here.
Commissioner Jones, present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The third item is public hearing. We have none. Is there anyone that would like to make comments from the public, either in the room or online? Would anyone like to make comments from the public this morning? Okay, last go on this. Does anyone like to make public comment this morning? Hearing none.
Madam Chair, I move we close public comment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item 5, consideration of changes on the agenda. We have none. Disclosures.
I have none, Madam Chair.
I am this.
And I do not believe I have any. Bailey's not here to. Item 7, approval of the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Item 8 of the regular agenda, discuss sponsorship of CDBG grant application for the Laramie Soup Kitchen and set a public hearing for September 16th, 2025 at 9:30 a.m. Good morning, Ed.
Want me to start? Or you want Bailey to start?
Yeah, come on up.
Okay.
Oh.
It's Bailey. Yeah.
Who's up on there?
Well, honorable commissioners and chair, thank you so much for the opportunity. Little last minute as the deadline for the CDBG grant, a letter of intent is next Friday. And then the application is due, I believe, late September. As you probably know, CDBG funding has to be sponsored by either city or the county. We actually reached out to the city first because the WCDA or Wyoming CDA, maybe, the entity that manages the funds is recommended we talk to the city first. So we did, and they actually suggested I talk to Bailey. So, and then Bailey thought that we could set this up. To give you a better idea, so what we're asking for funding for is it's under the slum and blight section of CDBG. And as it turns out with the city's recent urban renewal district that they just approved or are in the process of approving, part of urban renewal also requires the neighborhood to be designated as slum and blight. So having a project for slum and blight that's under a city thing that's slum and blight has a good chance of being classified as a qualified project for CDBG funding under slum and blight. So we think it's all going to connect together. The intention is, so when we started doing the, we obtained the property, which is the old Thunderbird, in April. We knew that there was going to be some asbestos issues in the building. So we did an initial survey of the asbestos and paid for that ourselves. Then there's actually funding available to the state, and we're working with WWC Engineering to do an ATS, so Asbestos Technical Services out of Cheyenne. And they're going to do a full asbestos survey in advance of us having to go to apply for the CDBG funding. So that WWC Engineering can put together an estimate for the cost to abate the asbestos. They think that if the world is perfect, it will be 40,000. But it could be more than that by a lot. So we're hopeful for 40,000. I have a soft quote for demolition. Now, granted, that soft quote does not follow a lot of the federal guidelines. That's more of a local company who wanted to give us a good discount for 160,000 for the demo. So we're looking at $200,000 minimum. But if we do go forward with CDBG funding, we'll have to follow all the federal rules that Bailey will talk about. And some of those cost estimates will go up, and there'll be some And so we've talked about trying to figure out how to balance between those two. And then just to give you a general overview of our idea for the project, and then I'll let you ask whatever question you have, is that our plan for the property is to tear down the Thunderbird, the old Thunderbird. It's in really horrible condition. There's more birds living inside than I think they're living outside. And so our plan is to tear this down, and then we're looking at building our last estimate was a $6 million nonprofit hub. So it would be a much expanded soup kitchen, a dining space big enough to host many of local nonprofits, fundraisers, a kitchen to match for that, expanded operations for the soup kitchen. But then because also we know that the soup kitchen is well known across town and that we have a good chance of being able to raise the money for the project, we wanted to share that. And since our collaborative approach has always been to work with other nonprofits, is this also offers space for another 6 potentially direct service organizations. So that includes not just office space for those organizations, but also kind of like consider an interior mall where you'd go down the hallway and there'd be direct service hubs for these 6 other organizations. So you can consider a diaper and hygiene pantry run by Family Promise, and then potentially a food pantry, potentially a teaching kitchen, although was more when Sensible Nutrition was still fully funded. So, but there might still be a space for that would really help the community out to have a teaching kitchen. We're also looking at a sliding fee coffee shop that would be run by ARC clients, and that we would stock our food in it so that someone could come in late at night for a meal and then also be able to buy coffee that would also support the ARC and those clients who are working and having meaningful work. And so that's all part of our master plan, including a warehouse space to cover all the food, and so that the diaper and hygiene pantry has a place to store all their diapers and hygiene products, and then loading bays, and then above that would be office space for other organizations. And another hub is going to be like a co-op space that's going to have multiple different cubicles for other organizations that don't have office space in the building to come in and provide direct services to our clients. So we're looking at this conceptual plan is something that has been done in other large cities, but nothing in our region. And so we are hoping that this can be a true, incredible addition to the nonprofit community when it's done.
Great. I can't remember right up. Is that a full city block?
It is a full city block. And so that's going to be our next step is that there is a alley there with a huge amount of other utilities. And so we are looking at figuring out a way if we can actually vacate the alley. That'd be the next step after this one. The CDBG funding would not be applicable to that abatement of the alley. And so, but our plan is that if we can actually abate the alley, we can build across the entire north side of the property, which will also put, primary reason is that would put our parking lot southern facing, so almost no ice issues. But then also anyone who travels down either 3rd or 4th Street would be able to see clear line of sight to the building, and it'd be much more of a welcoming space from both of those main thoroughfares.
Great.
Yeah.
So this grant that you're asking for sponsorship on is just the asbestos abatement?
It would be asbestos abatement and the demo. So it is, both pieces do qualify under the slum and bulk.
Yep.
And so the estimated amount is actually, we're leaning towards the 300,000 mark, just because we know that both of those bids are expected to go up. We should actually have better estimates by next week.
I guess, do you have, this is all conceptual at this point.
Yes, absolutely.
And your target, I'm assuming is 6 million?
Yeah.
Is there a percentage that you already have garnered for that?
There is not. So because we've been really focusing on just getting this demolition done, because I think that's.
I'm just wondering where you're at in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally understand. So I guess to be completely transparent, technically we don't have any funding for the project.
Okay.
But
you've got the project, you've got a site.
Yes, we have a site, which was a huge first step after 2 years of looking for property. But we do have some funders who have expressed interest in the project. And so while it's not an official yes, we.
Someone to lean on. Okay. Thank you, Ted.
Sure.
Bailey, do you have anything?
She said she's having issues with the sound.
I just.
Can you hear me?
I was just sending him a
Yeah.
message to IT.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect.
Oh, there you go.
So the last CDBG grant we had was actually in 2018, and that was the Slum and Blight as well. It was the Rock River Nuisance Project. So this is something we are familiar with. Since then, CDBG has turned over from Business Council to WCDA. So there's a few new rules with it. Federal funding has changed a little bit. Um, but I was telling Ted, I think this is a good project. I think there's a lot of people in the community that um, that they wish the Thunderbird would be torn down sooner rather than later. This project does not allow us to collect indirect costs. So that would have been a benefit for the county applying, but we're not allowed to recoup those costs. As far as rules that our contractors would have to follow that Ted mentioned, we have Davis-Bacon, which is the federal pay, and we have Buy America, Build America. I told Ted I have not had a chance to talk to Jake yet. He's out of town, but I will be pulling Jake in on this project. And he's very aware of all the rules that I need followed with federal funding. But the reporting is a little more than on some other grants. I don't have a problem with it. I told Ted that as long as he's willing to do the work, I'm willing to help him out on our end. But it is your decision. So today I just need a direction that you guys are okay moving forward with this project. Like Ted said, the letter of intent is due next Friday. The application is due September 30th. So it's a little tighter turnaround, and there's a lot of pieces to this application, but I'm not worried. I think I can get everything pulled together just fine. But I did have to go ahead and have you guys schedule a public hearing if you guys do wish to move forward with this for your second meeting in September due to timeline restrictions of the funding.
Thank you, Bailey.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment, and I'm glad this community seems to be, if you build it, they will come kind of, or if you build it, it will increase economic impact or whatever. I like the fact that you're planning on building a structure that actually includes other agencies or other contributing entities, which does help your cause quite a bit. I think, at least in my mind, that it's not just your agency, it becomes a resource to others. So thank you.
And we do feel like it would be irresponsible for us to go forward with the Massey project and not include other organizations.
Yeah. I have no problem offering support.
No, and I appreciate it, Ted. I'll always do your innovation at the soup kitchen. And then your collaboration, I think, at the nonprofit world. I don't expect anybody save us. We're going to save ourselves, and we're going to save ourselves with things like this that makes sense, that collaborate, share front office space, share heat bills, share light bills, so that we can make the better use of our money that goes to our clients. So yeah, I appreciate that.
So may I have a motion to set the public hearing for September 16th, 2025 at 9:30 a.m.
I move we sponsor the CDB grant application for Laramie Soup Kitchen and set the public hearing for September 16th, 2025 at 9:30 a.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you very much, Ted.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Item 9, discuss how to prioritize Albany County spec tax projects.
All right, I'll lead you on.
Good. Thank you.
And there's 2 worksheets here. I received everybody but Commissioner Haas. So majority wins, I guess. No. Nope, you're good. The first page just shows the entire list of the projects, and then how you ranked them, what you gave to me. And the other one is just the ones that you guys had chosen. So I didn't know how you wanted to look at it. It's kind of hard to see what's going to be the easiest, but I believe Jen has me set up to be a co-host to share the screen. Let me take out a second mouse off it. Although my left is. That big green arrow. Hmm. Oh, no, there it goes. And Tracy, I don't know, before you start, if you would like to, there was a request from Pilot Hill. After the priorities came forward. I don't know what you guys want to do on that. If you want to have Sarah explain that before you guys discuss more how you do that, but.
Well, Sarah's here. Let's come on up, Sarah, and
Thank you, Commissioner Jones, Commissioner Gosar, and Commissioner Ott. I realize we're kind of the last attendee at the party, so I apologize for that. And we're also not a government entity. So that's something that is something that I just want to acknowledge up front and make sure that you understand that we recognize that. I've talked to, at different times with all of you about the fact that the Pilot Hill area is wrapping up the infrastructure this year. We've completed the 40 miles of trail system that were outlined in the Pilot Hill land use plan. And we're under construction and hope to be welcoming the community to the trailhead facility this fall. So the board for the last year has really been starting to talk about our long-term strategic planning for the next 5 years. This project was launched in 2017 when the county commissioners created the oversight committee. And in those 5 years, we've really met that initial charge, which was to secure the property and develop the project so that it would be a viable entity for the community. And we now are trying to look at the long-term stability of the project and make sure that we have funding in place to do that. We've talked quite a bit with several different entities. We reached out to Jeremiah Ryman, the county commissioners. We talked to the city about this. We've talked to several of you, trying to look for a funding resource that would help us establish a trust that would spin off revenue annually to cover the primary operating costs of the property. Those costs include the lease that the county holds with the state, which right now runs $41,418 annually. Also insurance for the property, which is $35,800. We also assume that in the long-term operating for the property, we will need about one to 1.5 full-time equivalent employees. Probably the half-time would be more during the 8 months of reasonable weather in Laramie. There will be related administrative utility maintenance costs, and then the maintenance for the trails we anticipate will be about $4 per linear foot annually. Also with the new trailhead, there will be maintenance costs for just maintaining that large parking lot area and the shelter and bathrooms, et cetera, the user amenities that are in there. And then we've also factored in a rate of 3.25% for inflation, which is based on what the county agreed to pay in the lease fees to the state of Wyoming for the leases for the land. Just as a point of reference, we do not pay a lease fee to the University of Wyoming. We do have a management agreement with them also, but they don't charge us a fee for that management. So what we have come up with when looking at the SPET funds is that there is a section of SPET that allows for the establishment of a trust to fund operations for a government entity or to improve or maintain government property. So our thinking, and we did vet this a little bit with an attorney, is that if there was a trust that was established by the county, similar to how the city created a trust for the rec center, that trust could be invested and spin off revenue that would cover these basic operating costs. Pilot Hill would, of course, continue to fundraise, but be able to utilize those funds for other projects that are undoubtedly going to come up, future projects within the recreation corridor or within the wildlife habitat restoration projects. For instance, this year we've reactivated 2 wells on the property to provide water for wildlife year round. We've done a lot of erosion mitigation. There's always weed mitigation, etc. So that would be part of the commitment that we would of course make to this project as well. The legalities of this do need to be fully vetted, and we would certainly turn to the county attorney and to others to help make sure that this is appropriate. We have also approached the city about this and intend to go to city council with a matching ask of $5 million to the city, asking that the county and the city each carve out a portion of the SPET fund to create this trust. And we also know that there will be a term of years, for the SPET to be collected and then for those investments to create any returns. So we would continue to work forward like we have been over the years to cover the costs in the interim. But we are trying to also be realistic. We have over 1,000 households in Albany County that contribute to Pilot Hill, and they often contribute year after year. But we're a small population. We have a lot of need in this community. You have a long list of needs for this SPET funding as well, and I really respect that. We just know that federal grants and state grants, foundations don't necessarily like to fund operations. We've done a heck of a job raising money to invest in this project. We raised and invested over $5.5 million in Pilot Hill to make this a really viable recreation and attractive place for tourism revenue for the county. But we just feel like continuing to go to the community and try to raise $250,000 to $300,000 a year to manage an 11 square mile park is a really big lift. And if we aren't successful, then we run the risk of losing the leases. We run the risk of degradation of the property. And that's a real concern to our board and I assume to the county as well. Right now with the Trailhead project, we are investing $3 million in this community. Most of it is staying local. We have local contractors doing the bulk of the work on the project. Some of the materials, of course, are coming from out of state, but we are trying hard to make sure that we are realizing the economic impact that Pilot Hill potentially has for this community. With the economic analysis that was done by the UW Center for Business and Economic Analysis, it projects that conservatively, now that we are fully built out and an entity that we can really market, will attract non-local visitors that will generate $5.8 million in added value to the regional economy annually, support 150 jobs, and generate another $1 million annually in sales, lodging, and property taxes. We are starting to see that already. We have 3 more new events that occurred on Pilot Hill this year, and we have a lot of interest in being able to utilize the Trailhead facilities as they come on board. Our middle school cross-country team is especially interested because having all those parents standing out in the field isn't ideal in the hot sunshine in the fall. But again, this is a proposal that is a little bit late to the table. I did create a document for the commissioners with all of this information in it, also references to the data that we've gathered and the resources that we're leaning on to help us estimate what the costs would be and what the return on investment would be if we could create this endowment. And I stand for questions. I'm curious to hear what you're thinking.
I'll just lead off. I think it's a great idea. I don't know if it's applicable to SPET tax. I'm wondering about that. 10 million, if that were to be the number, that would be the second largest thing that is listed on the entire county list.
And Pete, I would just clarify, I may not have made this.
5 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But it's all going to go to the voter.
Yes.
Right? So it's going to be 10
Yeah.
million to the voter. And And we have a number, and I don't know what that number is. It might be zero that the voters will approve.
Sure.
But it's an all or nothing.
Mhm.
And not that I don't like the project, I love the project, I use the project. It's difficult to have that be that large in the great scheme of things. So.
And I appreciate knowing that. I agree, 10 million is a lot of money. I also think that part of our goal is to not continually come to the city and the county annually to ask for operating costs. And our hope is that by carving this out in this initiative, that investment would cover that and we wouldn't be continually coming back to your coffers and saying, you know, we have almost $100,000 that we need just to cover the lease and the fees. So I respect it's a large carve out of this tax. We think that legally it would qualify as long as the county held the trust, and hopefully it'd be written in such a way that I don't know if private funds could be added to that or not. That's a question that we're still trying to figure out, but that we could also add to it. And that if it generates more than 4% annually, of course, that would be returned back into the fund. And if for some reason in the future, this community decides that Pilot Hill is no longer a viable need for the community, that money would stay within the county. It would revert back to the county. So, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on this idea. Again, the goal is trying to find a source for getting an endowment going, because you know as well as I do that annual fundraising for these types of things, for saying, well, we'd like you to help us clean the bathrooms, is going to be a lift for this community. And we're trying to do it in a way that is respectful of what the commissioner's vision was initially when they said, yes, let's secure this property and protect the aquifer and not have a whole bunch of ranchettes out on the hillside.
Well, and I think that just missing the two forest organizations in the triumvirate
Absolutely.
are always asked for money, and the University of Wyoming, which has that large endowment, never seems to have to play a role, even though this is an incredible recruiting tool for the University of Wyoming. This is an incredible learning experience for the University of Wyoming. Why can't they be part of the solution?
And I think they can be, Pete. Again, the private piece of it is the question that we haven't quite figured out. And I have met with John Stark and with Bill Nye, Vice President at the university, to talk about this. The restriction that they're looking at is how they end up with a donor that can dedicate funds specifically to this use. We tried to secure some funding through their campus beautification fund, and that donor looked at that proposal and said that it was not what he had intended for those funds. And so they are in a little bit of a different ballpark, I guess, to say, as every foundation would be, that they have to work with donor intent, and it has to meet those needs, as you know. So we are still working with them on that. We also have worked with the Wyoming Community Foundation. I would like to see us have all the money go into one pot, but I'm not sure if it could do that if part of it is spent. It might be that we would need two separate endowments, one that is for private donations and managed either by the University of Wyoming Foundation or the Community Foundation, which actually has lower fees. But trying to figure that out too, because I agree, we don't want to be a two-legged stool. We don't want to be a one-legged stool. I think to build this endowment, we really need multiple resources pouring into it. But we also don't want to miss this opportunity to have consideration for the sixth penny. We have, of course, also talked about, would there be appetite in this community eventually to maybe try for a seventh penny instead and have that be targeted toward this and other projects. I think we're all aware of the fact that right now there's not a lot of appetite for new taxes. And I recognize that the county and the city are getting less revenue from the property taxes that are in place. But I do think that it's kind of fortuitous that we were able to finish this project much faster than we anticipated, and that hopefully it'll really start generating revenue and be a little bit of a solution to help kind of backfill some of that money that you're losing in other tax revenue.
Well, Sarah, you know that I've always been a supporter of the Pilot Hill project, and I was one of the three that were spearheading this in the beginning. And so I think it's very important project for Laramie and Albany County. You just have so many asks,
Yes.
and that it's going to be a really tough call for everybody. So, but
Well, and
glad you came to.
yeah, I think the long-term viability is the key here that we're really working toward. How do we make sure that what we've created is funded for the future? And we're really leaning on the county for the start of this because it's the county's project. You know, you hold the leases, you have the biggest stake in this. And of course, you know, I said, I did the math and I said, okay, $10 million would cover it. If the initial funding can't be that large, I recognize that as well. But we do need to get started because if not, our board will retire. Everybody that was initially involved that really is passionate about it will have other things that come and knock on the door. And we'll be in a position where we're saying, how do we continue to manage this open space area that is in the county and has been secured by our community? Zach, do you have any
Just one
questions?
other
Or-
comment, you touched on it. Nothing in your spec request reflected it, but you mentioned that it locks up land outside city limits
Mhm.
for conservation and water quality and that kind of thing. There's nowhere in this 50-page document that enumerates that.
50-page
Oh,
document.
what we were presented for this spec. So I guess we need to figure out whether we're doing this for conservation or recreation or economics. But it'd be money that would be allocated when more and more people are asking, what is my tax dollar being used for?
Mhm.
That the county has obviously a management interest in, but we don't own any of the property.
Yeah,
So
and
that-
you're right.
Yeah, and you're right. You're also correct. And there's a lot of hiccups that have to be overcome. And there's a lot more people that have to have a vested interest in. A lot of them work and live in Albany County, but through the university, and we have to solidify that. So.
Well, the university did contribute $2 million to the purchase of the property. Part of it is owned, part of it is state lease land. You're absolutely right about that. I think it's all three of those goals. The property overlies the aquifer recharge area. And a huge part of the reason that I believe both the county and the city and the university were initially interested in it was to protect that from development. The previous owner really intended if we did not choose to pursue this first rights of purchase with him, that he would go ahead and offer it up for development. And I think he definitely still intends to offer the adjoining property to the north for small ranchette development. So that was the conservation piece of it is big. We really intentionally carved out half of the property, more or less 4,000 acres of it is the recreation corridor where there are trails. 3,076 or so odd acres is the WHMA that is managed in partnership with Game and Fish. And that really truly is to make sure that we're really consciously conserving that land for wildlife habitat, especially with the I-80 corridor to the south. And then frankly, we just know that you look at surrounding communities that have good recreation trail systems adjacent to their communities, and the economic boost is tremendous. Albany County doesn't have a lot of mineral royalties. We may luck out with some of these mining investigations that are going on, and that may change. We do have some wind energy revenue coming into the state, but there's not a lot of appetite for that moving forward with the federal government in terms of supplementing passive or wind or solar energy. So I do think that leveraging our ability to attract tourism revenue is going to be important moving forward as an economic driver. And we know that we already have a couple of businesses in town that are benefiting. One brand new one that has several different entities happening and have supported downtown businesses. So as we start to advertise it, which we now need to do because we actually have a trail system and a trailhead, I know that we're gonna see more use of it from out of town and out of state visitors. I don't want to argue the point because I know you all know the project well, but I do really appreciate your consideration of just thinking about including Pilot Hill as an option for this 6 penny tax. It only comes around every once in a while, and it certainly would give us a foundation for making sure that this project that this community really cares about can be viable and sustainable in the future, and we won't be coming back to the table every year. Otherwise, you're gonna get really sick of me.
I just have one point. When city council talks about their impermeable groundwater and says that the water coming in from the county into the city from the east needs to be taxed, the county needs to account for the water flowing into city limits, and that it didn't originate in city limits. Councilman Shumway did this at one of the meetings. That the city needs to be on board with this too, and understand that, yes, it's a recreation area and the water, yeah, it's the recharge zone for the aquifer. That's where the water is
Water
going.
goes there.
That's,
Yeah.
I couldn't understand that comment, but all of their drainage problems, all that water originates outside city limits, whether it comes from the county, east, west, doesn't matter. So
Well, and I can't answer for the city council.
I know,
Only
but
thing I can say that is that they are willing to also entertain this proposal.
Okay.
And we really feel strongly, that, to be frank with you, the owner of this land did not want the city involved in the project initially. And we respected that, and he offered it to the county and to the university. The university could have bought the whole thing. Fortunately, in my opinion, it's a collaborative project. It includes so many stakeholders, I can't begin to list them all off. But the city is now one of them, and the city recognizes the impact that it's having for the community. And, we spent a lot of money in our engineering to create a detention pond in the trailhead, and we'll still pay the non-permeable fee as well. And I'm actually okay with that. I personally grew up here in Laramie. I feel like we have a real drainage problem close to where I live, and we need to address it. But I agree with you. This needs to be all hands at the table. We intend to have private dollars in this as well. I just haven't yet figured out if that could be within this trust or if it needs to be separate. So
Sarah, what is the charge for the stormwater for Pilot Hill?
we don't pay anything at this point because we don't have any utilities. Once
it
the
doesn't matter.
once the trailhead is
When it's completed, what is the
completed, I
charge?
don't know yet. We did have to put in, to make it ADA accessible.
Right.
We did put in 3 paved parking spaces. They allowed us a variance to not pave the parking lot, which saved us probably $1 million. We do have paved sidewalk for those ADA accessible individuals so that they can get to the different gathering spaces. So there is some portion of the parking lot that and gathering spaces that will be impermeable, and there'll be a fee.
Yeah.
But I don't
You
know
don't
what
know
that
what it
estimate
is. Okay.
is at this point. I could try to get an estimate, but I don't know at this point.
No, it's fine.
And we
I
really
just
don't
thought they
know,
might have,
we do know that the transformer for Pacific Power and Light was $10,500, $25, because I just paid for that. But, there are costs that we'll have to live through having the trailhead for a year before we fully realize what they are. I'm sure things have come out of the woodwork that I hadn't thought about.
Well, you're in luck because the city has it classified as UW property.
Hmm.
For-
It is actually UW
It is,
property.
yeah.
It's part
But
of
they have
our,
an
it's
assessment
part of our
golf
lease
course.
agreement. So, and again, the university did purchase $2 million worth of land, and they don't charge us for any of the fees. And they are probably providing at least $150,000 in services to the construction of the trailhead. So they're doing, in my opinion, they're doing things in a creative manner to contribute. And I am working with the foundation to try to figure out a way. I might need to find that donor myself, but that's part of my job.
Does anyone have any other comments or
I
questions?
don't, other than to say that the university that's still tax dollars.
I'm not sure.
If UW is buying property, that's still tax dollars.
I don't know what resource they use to purchase those dollars, that property. You'd have to talk with the university about it, but it was when the land exchange occurred, because the properties that were Pilot Hill lands, their valuation was much higher than some of the remote properties. And there has to be a balance in the numbers of acres and also the cost. There was a gap because the rural properties didn't assess at the same high value as the land that was adjacent to the community. So there was a significant bridge that we needed to come up with, and the university stepped in to help with that.
Sarah,
Did I explain that, Terry?
Yeah, you did.
I know you were.
Was
a
I
big
giving
part
you a
of
funny
those.
look?
No, I just,
Oh,
it's
no.
been a few years since we went through that process.
Yeah, well, no, I remember that very well. Thank you very much for your
Well,
presentation.
thank you so much for allowing me to at least put this on the table for you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay. What are your thoughts, Tracy?
She's just gonna be irritated at me now because I just emailed her.
What?
Jerry,
I just had a comment. Are we
Oh, I'm
gonna
sorry,
set a
Jerry.
data use fee or an annual pass fee?
Can I?
Yes.
Jerry, we do have authority to assess a fee. The challenge is that our borders are very porous. We have one small trailhead where we could charge people as they come into it. But most of the area is open to either neighborhoods, the national forest, etc. So really finding a way to enforce a fee would be difficult. One of the pieces that we have in the trailhead design that we haven't quite paid for yet, we're a little short on our $2.9 million price, but is a kiosk that is electronic, that looks like a parking fee station.
Yeah.
So that people that come in from out of town will say, oh, I need to pay for my parking pass and donate. We also have, of course, QR codes on every sign on the property and everywhere else, inviting people to contribute. And that's where most of our contributions come from. People that go up and take a hike and have a great day are really supportive of coming back and clicking on the QR code and sending us $5 or $10. And that really helps. But to raise a significant endowment that's really going to generate the amount of revenue that we need annually, we feel like we need help with that. Yeah, I would love to hire somebody to go and patrol the parking area, but
Well, like you go to Rocky Mountain National Park, et cetera, and other places.
yeah.
You got annual passes and daily use fees and,
Yeah, and they have designated entrances and exits,
yes.
which is a big part of it. You know, I know half of the community jumps in on Boulder Drive, half jump in on 45th and Crow, quite a few ride over Willett, the hill on Willett and jump in there. A lot of people right now are shuttling friends up to the top to come all the way down because that's an easier hike and ride. A lot of the horse packers like to park off the 703 F and C
So it's
roads.
up to enforce is what you're saying.
But we do have the authority within our leases to do that.
So does anyone have any suggestions on how they'd like to go about rating the different asks for the spec tax?
I am adding Commissioner Hoff's choices that he just emailed me.
And I don't know that you even need to. I'm okay with the top 5 for Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Dosar's.
Oh, now I know what your email was. Oh, thank you.
And my question is it says, the county building says amount reduced $500K for addition of tech. Is that increased or
Do you-
reduced?
That was actually included in,
In your email, Pete, you denoted it as 27.5, and then we
Right.
also have that second project down below at 500,000. which I don't know that the 500,000 is in the 30,000. I just put that note there because you had it reduced by that.
Yeah, I just took the cost of the Justice Center and divided by 2, and that came out
Oh,
to
that's how you got it. I just
27,500,000.
assumed.
Yeah.
So then I'll take off that
yeah.
because that's what I
Yeah.
assumed.
And so
Right.
there's no reason to have a new building if it doesn't have IT.
Oh, yeah.
And so whatever that number is, if it needs to be 28 million, or if it needs to be 30,500,000.
I think it needs to be 30,500,000. I think within the building costs is all the wiring and all the things.
Yeah.
But the $500,000 is the additional technology and hardware that would go into the building.
Okay, that was my understanding. So that's why I put the IT as my number 2 choice, because there's no point in having a building without IT. Correct.
Jennifer, when the estimates were being done for the new whatever, was there like a baseline bare minimum we can get by with this, and then another that was, this is everything we could possibly ask for and we're secure for the next 50 or 60 years? Is that the $30 million number?
So the 30 since Jake isn't here, I hate to speak on his behalf, but I will tell you what I think I know.
Okay.
Is I think that $30 million number was when we did those initial RFPs and the architects and engineers talked to all of the departments and had an idea of space needs, not a final idea, but had initial discussions. That those space needs plus Jake's calculation of what it would cost to build that building and do all of the exterior things that would be required for a building that's in the city came up to the $30 million. I don't think it was excessive, like we are overbuilding in hopes that it'll be filled in 30 years. I think it was, we are building for what we need now, plus some additional, so that we're not in the same place we're in the next 10 or 15 years.
Sure.
But I don't think it was like a massive overbuild of anything. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yes, without being an engineer, and yes.
I
I
was
figured
gonna
you
say-
had something in mind though, so in all the quests for space.
So if we put 30.5 million dollars into that bucket, we would cover some new county building. And whether it's whatever it is, but some new county building, seems like we're all in agreement with that as number 1.
I think so.
Okay, now we get to 2.
Are those just having babies over there? They are.
She
That
knows
was
it
my fault.
she knows it irritates me, so she really likes doing it. Do we need to have to populate a list of top 10? I'm just trying to think what is gonna be fiscally possible and what is gonna be probable.
Right. Yeah.
Did,
For some reason, I don't think I obviously looked at the building, because I think the building that you prioritized, Terry, at 4 and 5, I didn't put any on, but for the courthouse itself, for the boiler
oh,
replacement. and
yeah,
the
see that,
cooling.
I think that's a,
Yes, I kind of think you're correct. For some reason, I didn't see that.
because no matter what, if
Yeah.
we get a builder and we don't get a building, we need to have a boiler.
Right.
Fix it in this
That's how I was
Yeah.
looking at that.
Yeah.
So I put the boiler at number 2, just,
Okay.
You
And I
want the
think the-
boiler or the HVAC for IT closets?
so I have that different, I have that listed lower because that's more of a long term.
Well, and I think something on the boiler that we can talk about too is when you look about spec tax and the boiler and when this possibility may go out, it may go out before this tax is collected.
Right.
We have
Right,
money
that's
in
where I
the
was
building
coming
reserve
from.
fund to, maybe those projects need to be looked at. Those can be
Well,
paid for out of money that we
If
already
we
have
put it
set
on
aside.
spec and we've already had to expend it and the ballot's
don't
already
get to-
printed, we don't get to reuse it.
Correct.
Okay.
So my thought is maybe those projects in terms of like the boiler, the things for this building, that we know is gonna need to be done, but we're not sure when it's gonna need to be done, which
Sure.
it could need to happen prior to. We don't want ourselves to get stuck into a position where we can't use it for anything else. So,
And then the nature of the collection of the tax, we only incrementally, proportionately apply towards each project as the percentage of the total ballot So we might get, say 100,000 in a month for the sales tax, but only 8,500 is gonna go towards that boiler replacement each month. So we might not be able to pay for it. at
Couldn't you
today's price.
rephrase that
Um,
so that it could be used in the new administrative building? If we had to have already used it in the courthouse.
For countywide HVAC and heating.
what if you did exactly like what Pilot Hill is suggesting and in a building maintenance sinking or trust?
Yeah.
For all county buildings, then
Almost
it's
like
like
I set up already, like our county, our
Mhm.
building reserve fund that we have
Right,
to fix for things for any county building.
then you're not confined to one building. And then,
Yeah,
but you
I-
might have to add, may include boilers, sidewalks,
Roofs.
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 Lots of roofs.
Well, that would probably satisfy the library request as well, if we can open it up to all county buildings.
Correct, because we own those buildings.
Yeah.
We also own all of the fairground
that
buildings.
we do.
Yeah.
So maybe we should work on a,
Endowment, almost like
an endowment that,
almost how we have our building reserve fund.
right, but I mean,
Are we
and this,
limited on language?
You have to be
I
specific.
get it, it's the specific purpose, but how specific do we need to be?
The word
I mean-
is Tim Sullivan, vaguely specific.
Okay, so if we need to list every possible county building that we may be using these funds on, that's,
No.
I don't.
certainly
You can
better
just
than
do
having,
county
Say
owned
county-owned buildings,
Okay.
because that limits
it's
it.
certainly better than every road in city limits.
Yes.
I'm just trying to, okay,
and that might help us with a lot of these problems.
that might actually
Trying to
consolidate a
figure-
lot of the
yeah.
effort, okay.
So do we need to, Jennifer, do we need to check on the legality of doing that kind of a?
I need to figure out how to do that, and hadn't even looked into
That's
that
okay.
until we talked about it before, but I will.
Well, that
Because
would
I
be-
think that could solve, or help
Let's look
solve a
at
lot
how
of our
that would,
problems.
so both of the Anthony's would be,
combined, part of the fairground ask would be combined and some of the library as well. Hold on, I'll get to it. Yeah, so that would combine, and I don't know, could we put landscaping so that? Yeah, okay,
I would
so
probably just
the
confine
roof
it to buildings.
itself. And possibly the drop ceiling.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, that would combine quite a bit. And not necessarily slush fund, but allocate it specifically for,
Any of these uses.
yeah, over the next election of the tax.
Yeah. What kind of dollar amount would you like? Like building?
Because then if the boiler had to be fixed before the collection, we could spend it out of the building reserve fund. It wouldn't matter. Then that money could go to something else.
Right, that's where I was trying to
Yes.
go.
Okay,
It opens up those funds for something else.
Right, it's the words that matter.
Yes, it is the words.
so Rachel's would be 100,000 for the library.
It's like 4 million if you include,
Yeah,
sheriff is any of the sheriff stuff to the building itself, the security upgrades, are those actual to the building itself? Would they-
That's to the jail,
Jail,
yes.
yeah.
The other three things I asked for are, I believe, equipment costs.
Okay,
So the surveillance and security upgrades, that would be. I mean, would that
and that's
be
above and
considered-
beyond what you're already doing with the infrastructure and then.
That's gonna be above and beyond the collected tax money that we're already spending for those upgrades at the facility.
it's 3.6, like $4 million we covered, I think,
Yeah.
from what I see.
Thought on that, now you're creating this pool of money, now you're gonna have to fight between you guys to see who gets that money. Who's,
Well, let's just say that it's there to be fought after, I guess.
Which is better than
Yeah.
not having it
Yeah.
there.
what I'm saying though is if somebody thinks that we're putting on here to fix my roof. That might not necessarily be true if it's not a necessary thing right there. Which is fine, I think it's a great way to do it, I'm just
You're
looking-
just being the devil's
I'm looking
advocate.
forward thinking, okay, now we got this pool of money and
Well,
But I don't-
are my drop down ceilings more important than
The grandstand or
the
something.
grandstand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Which is fine, that's a decision that the board can make, and that's.
But at least we'll have the option of making
Yeah.
it.
I'm just saying that's,
I think it's more probably palatable to the public if we're saying we are planning on spending or receiving X amount of dollars and improving these 5 areas within your county structures and not just earmarking this much for, so if the grandstand, if the pile of money for the grandstand and the pile of money for the library don't work out quite well, or the roof falls in or something like that, we at least have a pot of money to work out of instead of.
and the hard part is if you don't do it that way, we're gonna do, say we're gonna do I'm gonna just use the drop down ceiling at the library, because that's something
Yeah.
specific. If you have it stated that way, then, and you
Yeah.
don't do it,
Mhm.
you can't use the money.
Sure.
Correct.
So it's probably better to do it the way you're talking about doing it.
But Rob, if I hear you correctly, I think there's some rules of engagement that if we put it on the thing, I think we should hammer that out beforehand.
Yeah.
Because, it might be that a roof fails. And that's probably more important than something that's down the road a bit.
Yeah, exactly. That was
Maybe it
my,
needs to be
that
on
was
me.
kind of my worry that all of a sudden we end up spending that somewhere really quickly and then.
Right.
Well, I think that's really a legitimate
I
concern.
think it does buy us an insurance policy for the next 7 to 10 years for covering costs on just routine maintenance that is going to happen, whether,
Absolutely.
yeah,
You don't
it's
have to
what we
come
have
up
to,
with
it's
that.
what we have to steal from to pay for the expense, so.
For example, Road and Bridge already has 100,000 on a roof. But we're stuck on, that's where it's can only be spent, is basically on the roof and I think the garage doors or whatever, but.
Going back to the 2018, we had a lump of county building projects under county building projects. I could go back to the ballot here. And then in our working documents, we had 200,000 allotted to this room. We had other things, but that's where these backup documentation and documenting every little thing, because there were some gaps in the last time, but the more we have documented and then we put the watch guards in there where you guys see these vouchers each month. And I also sign off on all the specific purpose tax under the department head on the voucher, because I'm already vetting them before they get to you. But it's also, if I screw up, then you guys should catch it too. If I screw up, I beat myself up, but. Yeah.
So Tracy, is what you're saying is that on the ballot, it's less specific, but our backup documents are saying this is how we derived this $4 million
Oh, so
number.
there's the
We had
rules.
these 7 buildings that were on the list. Now, maybe this one's dropped out because we got a grant for it or something so that we don't have to use that money. So we can use it for a different project. But
Exactly.
these were the projects that were the intent of the money. We just don't want to specifically state that because maybe there's funding for it somewhere else.
Yes. I think, one of those things is, we had the change in IT staff between the 2018 tax and then when we started collecting. And then the new IT is like, well, I don't know what was intended, but it just basically says, infrastructure. So then it's just like, fix us.
But what you're saying is there is a document in place, so if somebody from the public does come say, I want to know how my tax dollars are spent,
We
that
could say
it
this.
exists exactly on paper, and this is how it
This is
was
how we
administered.
derived this.
This is how it
number.
was collected, this is how it was administered, and here's how we've accounted for it.
And
once we get to maybe that point where we have a final document, I mean, we have the final resolution, once we agree to, that's a, mutual document between the city, town of Rock River and the county, which memorializes the overall projects. But if we could have backup documentation, maybe that goes along with it, that says this is this much for courthouse boilers in this project and.
Okay. And if I'm understanding, what Commissioner Gosar did was basically just dollar cost average a building. You took the detention center or the, whatever the heck word, the justice and new county admin, add them together, divided by 2. And that's okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be.
No,
that.
I got it.
Yeah,
I just-
you'd
I-
have to-
I'm
you
not
have
gonna
to
try to
just
split the
figure out
baby
something.
here. I was just like, well, it's just yeah, and I have to say that when I leave this, and somebody else, she comes to replace me, she might have a different take on what is a priority, and that's how this goes, right? Elections should have the ability to be, changing in how people view stuff. So I like this idea, and I think that the idea makes
I
sense.
think, yeah, I
I
think that answers a lot.
I think
of
it's
the
certainly more
questions.
palatable for the public.
So can you tell me what dollar amount and what projects you're calculating in there so I can have those notes?
I came up with 3,350,000, but I don't know. Commissioner Gosar has different numbers. So-
Well, I just did it quickly. So I did the ACDC surveillance and security upgrades was 250,000.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
I did the courthouse boiler replacement, which was 500. Cooling equipment in the county facility, 150,000. Grandstands were 1.5. Sheep barge, 750. Remodel the children's area, 300,000. Add drop ceiling, 25,000. Yeah, new siding for activity building, that's 350. I guess building repairs and upgrades. And yeah.
You went awfully fast, so.
Oh,
I
okay.
was like, hold on, can we start at the
Okay,
top of the
I'm doing
list
it.
and
You
work
bet.
down maybe?
You bet. Okay.
I'm not that fast because my hand is not,
It has nothing
I was
to do with
trying.
yet.
Okay, so ACDC, security upgrades,
Which,
the $250,000, the 5th priority on the sheriff's list.
got it.
Okay, grandstands. I got-
And then the boiler and the cooling equipment for the facilities, for the building here.
Which boiler is 5?
500.
I have
that.
150,000.
You're the best. How much is cooling equipment? Okay, is that the cooling equipment?
Grandstands for 1.5.
Okay,
Did you do sheep and swine also, Pete?
I did. I just threw everything in there that was, I consider to be a repair and a maintenance of a building. Now, maybe we don't want to do that. Maybe we do, but just throw it all into the pot will get no bigger than this.
Mhm.
If we want to start chopping things out of the pot, then we'll do that.
I had one additional point. I think if you set it into a trust, you can also generate some revenue off of it.
That drops you.
So if you have a project that ends up,
Costing more.
yeah,
Or less, you build that money.
How much? 25. And then you had this children's area and the drop ceiling, and those are the last 2.
And then did you have the new siding for the activity building?
Oh no, hold on, let me go back.
That's 300,000, 350.
$350?
Yep. And then there was building repairs and upgrades at the 700,000.
Rachel, was the new roof, did you take that one off of your list?
Yeah, I mean, it's in this combination, knowing that we have an option, but we haven't finalized paperwork, but we're pretty sure that it will, the major repairs that need to
Will
get
happen
done will
during-
happen under this infrastructure grant that we.
Okay, so 75 can come off.
I'm sorry.
Put a real thin line.
4.25,
5, yeah, 4.5.
does that sound right?
Yeah.
4.5.
Yeah, I'm still missing one here.
I have them on the screen.
She does.
Is it 4.455?
4.525.
So
Okay,
she's got it right there if you
Flip around and look at,
okay. I guess it is right in front of me.
Or right, right.
It's right here.
You need to flip, I guess.
I forget you have that one.
Terry can't see it because she's too
I know.
short.
If I tease the room, I'd really like a monitor right here.
No. I think that needs to be upped a little bit.
No, just so I can see all the stuff on my screens.
I'm 5'10" and I have a hard time
It's
seeing
too
that
much
one too.
for
I
me.
know it needs to be lifted. I might have. Okay.
Okay. Well, that's a number we can work with. And it looks like it'll be the largest ask if all included that the county's done.
With just those two?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great way to build some, even like how Sarah's saying, if it goes into a trust or something, build some ways to be able to continue fixing on buildings that do benefit the whole community, you know, because it is our biggest cost is the upgrade of buildings and deferred maintenance that costs a lot of money. And if you don't put that money towards it, it just becomes more expensive. So.
And so what I appreciate about Anthony's is we had an actual quote.
Mhm.
I think there needs to be like actual quotes as best as a person can come up
Yes.
with. Right? Because if not, we're just ballparking it.
Yeah.
We're spitballing it, and I just don't feel like spitballing this. I don't think.
Yeah.
So if anybody's in there, I think that would go back to the fairgrounds, to the library.
Exactly,
to the
exactly.
Yeah, and we
Sheriff's
can send, we
Department to
have,
give
ours
us
are
a
actual
quote of
quotes as
this
well.
stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah.
If
Did you
could
do
send
that? I can send that documentation over if you.
Yeah, I'd love
Please do.
supporting documents for all this
Yeah,
stuff.
totally.
I think that'd be great.
No,
And Tracy and I can reach out to Taylor at the fairgrounds and ask if she can.
I know
get us
some of this was like the siding and that kind of stuff, but
Yeah,
the amount of people that, and it,
and I don't know if you look at a quote now and go, okay, now if this is gonna be done in 2 years when it's collected, do you add 5%? Do you, you know, I don't know, because I don't know what building costs are gonna be in.
We don't know what they're gonna be in 3 months.
I know in 3 months,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's helpful to have something to go off of, but maybe you need to inflate that by some, I don't know. Or
Well,
maybe that's
and-
part of what then the fairgrounds, maybe that portion of it is taken by the tax and that other portion is put in by the fairground, you know, if I don't bear for it or whatever, you know, whatever that
Yeah.
increase is.
and whether it's on the list, I know David just left, but there were a couple of things we need to work on, the Centennial area and some other things that,
Absolutely.
that
Centennial.
don't necessarily need to be a sped tax, but they do need
To be something.
some attention, so. But his weren't large.
No, they weren't huge.
But if you maybe, you know, free up some of this money that we wouldn't be using for
Absolutely.
coming out of the general
Yeah.
fund or out of our general, those monies can be used
Yeah.
then for other projects.
and it would be nice on this list if, I thought, but I don't know for sure, if the sheriff's vehicles could be wind impact assistant funding.
Some of them.
Do you remember, Aaron, if that, some of them can be, probably not all of them? Did you already remove that out of this?
So I removed that out of it. So the asks for, body cameras, vehicles, did I ask for in-car camera systems?
No, that's not on there anyways.
What were the 3 ones? Can you remind?
Oh,
I don't-
Sheriff's Office patrol vehicles, sheriff office body camera equipment and storage, search and rescue replacement.
So the vehicles and the body camera storage, that was asked for in the last special purpose tax. And we spent that money for a contract that expires at the end of when this tax is collected. So the contract for the body cams and storage would be coming out right when this comes out. So that's why that ask is on there. Because like I said, then you get those funds, you could pay for that contract and then it's there. So that money has already been expended for it. For the sheriff's vehicles, we have two pots of money. We have the money from the special purpose tax from 2018 which, we're not fully collected on yet, but we have, fully expended those tax funds on those vehicles. We have additional vehicles for that future expansion of the sheriff's office on our impact assistance funds. And we're currently, as we grow our fleet, we're already spending that money for those new vehicles. The bid that you guys approved to be advertised 2 weeks ago, and then the bid that'll come on your September one, is impact assistance on there as well. So, and we start to collect that new special purpose tax, those vehicles are gonna start coming offline and then need to be replaced. That's the thought process behind it.
So let me ask a question type. Would this have been, let's say, for instance, $700,000 for the sheriff's office patrol vehicles if there were no wind impact assistance funds? Did you cut it down somewhat because of the wind impact assistance? I'm just wondering if it was.
You're covering patrol vehicles with wind impact and the specialty SAR vehicles with sped. Is the way I understood it.
Yeah, because I don't know where to get.
You need the.
I'm just hypothetically saying, did you give us a half cost for sheriff replacement vehicles because half of it's already covered by wind impact assistance? I'm trying to figure out how you're figuring a wind impact assistance in sheriff vehicles.
We figured that it was going to be approximately anywhere between 6 to 8 years of collecting those tax funds. And so we knew that we would probably be spending anywhere between $60,000 to $80,000 per year replacing the 2 or 3 vehicles, because we're not at that portion where we have to replace 4, 5, and 6 vehicles a year. It'd only be just a handful of vehicles a year.
Are you doing like 2 or 3 a year?
Mhm.
Is that what the way it works?
Yep. And so we took that average cost of what the replacement vehicles would be per year that tax would be collected. You don't get all that money up front.
But we won't leave wind impact assessment money on the table if we get this number. That's my whole goal, is to not leave wind impact money that goes back to the state to charge
No.
taxes to our local people.
We won't be leaving.
Okay.
A good portion of those impact assistance funds are for personnel and the equipment that comes along with that, of hiring that personnel.
Okay. So I think what looks to be left for me would be the sheriff's group of stuff here that 2, 3, and 4. And then David's stuff, which I think we could handle with our own budget.
Yeah, just looking at the history, and I don't know how challenging it's gonna be to get everything approved this go around. I think now more than ever, people will pay attention, and probably will be,
I think there will be.
so.
Great.
You have 1.3 in 2, 3, and 4 for the sheriffs. What's left that isn't the detention center, which isn't the security upgrades.
Yeah.
So 1.350. We just put that in on the list as we're grouping them, Tracy.
Yeah, I would encourage you guys to put that on the list as they're listed. We did that last time.
Okay, so patrol vehicles first, body cameras, storage, okay, then.
Okay. Independently listed them on the
Yes.
sped tax. Okay.
That's what was done in 2018. And it, I know for a lot of your other funding projects that you guys are trying to do, you're trying to keep it specifically vague so that there's some wiggle room for those.
But these don't need to be?
They don't need to be.
Okay.
These 3 can be very specific, because that's what we plan on using the funding for.
Okay.
And at this point, I don't know that it matters whether we narrow it down too tight or not, as is.
The only new ask from the sheriff's office is for the search and rescue replacement vehicles. That was not asked for on the prior special purpose tax. And we're having an extremely hard time trying to find outside funding and grant funding to replace those types of vehicles.
And then Tracy, could you put in a Pilot Hill, just because we've heard it, and then we're probably gonna have to, my guess is I want to sit with this a little bit and not here and think about what I would like to feel my priorities are, and then go back with you guys and we can kick it around one more time.
I thought it was 5 million.
5 million, I think was the full ask for the county. Sarah, yeah.
Just as a reminder, the first meeting with the city and town of Rock River is next Monday at 6 p.m., the 25th. And Tracy and I are gonna meet with Nancy, the city clerk, this afternoon to kind of see how we want to tailor the meeting. And I don't know that you guys have to have a hard, I think we need to have a list of our projects. I have a feeling this is gonna be the first of many meetings. I know that the city, I believe, is meeting tomorrow regarding their spec project, so they haven't even met about theirs either.
So they're gonna need to do the same thing.
So I don't know if we want to have a special meeting on Tuesday morning or on Monday morning, the 25th, before we go to that meeting. I kind of feel like even if we don't have it hard and fast, I think even if we have our list of projects, I think that's gonna be the biggest thing, is going there at least with an idea of what we want to do. I don't know that like I said, I think this is gonna be the first of many meetings.
I think it'd be good to have a special meeting.
I mean, I don't know if it would be helpful maybe on maybe even Friday morning, so that we can, because I think we're gonna have to have some documentation ready before the meeting on the 25th.
Oh, okay.
So maybe on Friday, maybe we look at,
For what reason do you?
I don't know, and to
documentation?
prioritize, but kind of my thought is we're kind of prioritizing right now.
Yeah.
We're getting our list of projects.
Well, that'll give us a little time to think.
And then, I mean, we just go to the meeting on the 25th on the evening. It's a work session. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not like we don't have to make any decisions. I think it's just a matter of everybody throwing their stuff at the wall and saying, okay, how's this gonna stick? What do we all feel about it? So I mean, even going with this list of projects and just say, this is our list of projects. It could move, it could change, but this is what we've come up with.
Right.
This is our total amount. What's it gonna look like? I don't know. I have no idea what Rock River's asks are. I have no idea what the city's coming with. So I mean, really, I feel like this first work session is really just gonna be a matter of all of us getting together and putting all of our projects on paper and then saying, okay, maybe we all need to marinate on it a little bit and come back and.
So now you're saying we probably don't need a meeting before then.
I don't know that we do.
Okay.
I mean, what are your thoughts, Tracy?
Unless you want to have a revelation and say,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to do something, whatever.
I mean, it's up to you
Well, I
guys.
think we're probably gonna not do some of this.
Oh, I do
I
too.
mean, it's gonna have to happen, I think,
I
yeah.
mean, if you decide that before, I mean,
I don't want to decide it before. I don't want to negotiate with myself. I want to see what Rock River has.
And that's kind of where I think we need to go. I think we need to go with the all list of our projects and say, this is our total ask. Yes, it might be 75 million, but this is what we're asking for. Then we negotiate. I don't think we cut any of our projects out before we even get to the table.
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's my thought, but.
Because this negotiating is ugly.
Yeah.
It's really ugly.
I'm hoping that it's not gonna,
Me
I'm
too.
being cautiously optimistic.
Well.
That is gonna be maybe too
I have
optimistic.
gone back to listen to recordings from 2018. I'm on the first meeting and it was pretty more of a, just like a fact finding mission. of
Yeah, and I think that's what this first meeting is gonna be a matter of, you know.
Well, I feel comfortable with this list on the Monday meeting. I don't know what
Okay,
everybody
that's
else
fine.
thinks.
I can do that.
Is there no appetite for the airport on there?
Oh, we got a report there.
I think that was the only one that's not on there now, isn't that correct?
Are they asking from the city also?
Yeah,
Are they asking the same amount for the city?
I think it'd be a joint thing.
I have no idea if they are or not. Tracy
I
may
think that
know.
was the total ask.
I think, yeah, they presented
Yeah.
9 million to both entities.
So I guess.
Because so
Four
on
and a
the
half.
prior ones, the airport was its own line, separate from the city and the county.
But then the county bonded their money. as well.
Correct, but I mean, when it went on the ballot,
Yes.
it wasn't included in the city's portion or the county's portion. It was its
Separate.
own line.
But they probably won't be there, right, to negotiate with us, so we might as well put four and a
They've
half
been
million.
invited. They're aware of the meeting. I would hope they would attend to represent their ask, but.
Okay,
I don't know that it would be coming out. It'd just be their slice of whatever pie.
I think it
Size
would be
then.
the entity saying, we're allowing you to take a slice of the pie.
Yeah, that's
A
more
9 million
of the.
slice of the pie, all three entities would have to agree on it. And I think that's probably, if I remember correctly, I think that's how it happened before, that all three entities thought, okay, this is a portion that we're gonna just, this benefits the whole community.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's similar to Pilot Hill. It's essentially creating a building that creates an endowment that allows it to operate in perpetuity.
right, does it need to be on our list?
I would imagine where you guys probably want to put it on the list, so
That's
that's
my
part
question.
of the.
I did, just so,
Yeah.
so I don't
So
accidentally.
Tracy, I don't know if you just
Right.
want to
Yeah.
put it
Right.
on the list.
Yeah.
I did bring up the 18 ballots so you could see. Yeah, that it's number 2 under the county.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, it's in the.
I don't know if you can see that, Tracy.
I don't know.
Jesus.
It looks like.
Perfect, thank you.
Let me get out the
Expect that.
binoculars.
People eyeballs are not gonna see that.
So it has the county projects and then the airport and then the
The-
city.
Is that the 4 set? Oh, no, that's,
This-
no, never mind.
And then after the lengthy list, I think it goes to Rock River.
Well, I think we're also gonna have to take into account that some of this we're not gonna be able to bond. We're probably just gonna have to wait for the money to accumulate and pay for it. It's not gonna be, because
Our bonding capacity is not huge.
well, and even that, so if, just while he was doing the presentation on the bonding at the last meeting, a $9 million bond, we lose $2 million over the course of the bond, just in bonding
Right.
interest. So there's no reason to necessarily rush right in if we can start mid-collection. I don't,
Our debt capacity is $13,362,958.98.
so we'll have to collect quite a bit in advance and go from there.
Yes, and we do have some monies set aside, like, because the big thing you probably want to bond would be the building.
Yeah.
You could carve out some of those little projects and get them done, but we do have some money set aside in, and then there's the LATCF, the new facility reserve, where you can start doing those, some projects, and paying for them, but
Yeah.
you really all have to bond to. And then how they sell, if they sell it at a premium, you might get more money, but eventually you have to pay that back too, so.
Tracy, could you send me this? Since you already have it, or.
The
Yeah,
ballot, yep.
Yeah,
I'll send it
that
out
would
to
be
everybody.
great. I might-
Isn't it in the P drive somewhere?
Ian?
Tracy sent them out. I don't remember if you
Okay.
might have just
I
sent them
thought-
to me,
okay.
Tracy. I don't.
I made.
I think she sent them all.
When I made my book, because
Okay,
I ended up referring to it a lot.
When,
I'd like to read it so I can understand.
when we were talking about the new building, we didn't add in the trust money or however we're gonna do that, money for remodel of the courthouse. Cause that'll have to happen regardless of what kind of a building we build. So and I don't know that we have any estimates on that, anything, but regardless of whether we move county services into another building or we move court,
That's gonna be a way hypothetical number.
it is, I think we can get I mean, but we have to put some kind of a ballpark
If
number
there's-
in there because it has to happen regardless. We can wait until Jake is back to get you some kind of a. this
Well, it depends
would-
on what the configuration ends up looking like.
Correct.
If it leaves this building for the other and how much spaces and which
It does.
spaces.
Yes.
We could get like a
Square.
low baseline number regardless of what you're gonna do. If you're gonna create new office space or do anything. Just
Yeah.
to start.
What ends up, I guess, what the city ends up doing with all their things too. If Lark moves out of the jail and that frees up space over there,
Correct.
yeah, this is.
So you could include that in the first item, right? Building
Yeah,
a
that
new
could
building
be,
and
yeah.
renovating.
It could be
existing
building and
space.
renovation, change that.
Now, I don't know if you need to add money to it or not. I think with the sheriff's big estimate, you probably wouldn't. But with the estimate that is being talked about at 30 million, you probably would.
Well, I think even if the sheriff's building were to happen, we're talking about moving the courts out of this building, which means then those spaces would have to be remodeled to move office spaces in.
Right, but you're 25 and you've got 30.5 million, so you've got 5.5 million to do the renovations. If everything is go as planned. So if the sheriff's building is 25 million, you have 5.5 million to do the renovations.
That's true. But if we move-
Administrative.
if we do an administrative building, there's not money in here.
Well, unfortunately, I don't see how we're just gonna get away with just one building or it's either gonna be a complex or it's gonna be I just don't see one structure in this town with the square footage that we have in the area to build it. Even if we try to compact it as much as possible into the same geographic area, we still may be a block or two apart, kind of thing.
There have been previously when we were looking, properties in city limits that met the 4 acre-ish, if we're talking about a new city services or a county service building. There are properties that have come up for sale off and on that would meet the 4 acre requirement, so everything could be all on the same space.
In city limits.
Yes. There have been previously, but we haven't.
It's just that
But
the
they
city's
came,
MOC sits outside city limits, so that's the fun part.
but they came with extra infrastructure.
Yeah, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is doable. It just was by the Douglas Justice Center the other day, and I know they have a lot of money, but they were able to somehow put their justice center all together. And the same with Laramie County, and so this is not a Sweetwater County.
Our issue becomes parking.
Mhm.
And there's not any other like Laramie County has the parking structure that's across the street that is used by everybody. We don't have space anywhere around.
We don't have a
our house
dilapidated part of town
add
that gets
par-
demoed.
to purchase to add a parking building.
We're not putting it,
Is the Douglas Justice Center, isn't it out on, when you come off the interstate,
Yes,
right on the
out by
first exit,
Wyandotte.
so it's,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. But do they have a new county facility too?
That I don't know.
I believe they do as well.
No, they have plenty enough money to.
Well, they definitely do, but
Yeah.
I think that they do. I could ask Karen, the clerk there, but I think that they.
Both Commerce County and Sweetwater County built their facilities outside of the city limits, close to both of their highways and both also have a different funding model than what we
Yes.
have here.
Totally different.
it's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
On there as well. So what you've seen in Laramie County, and somewhat in Natrona County are closer to what we're trying to do here, where they took existing land and existing space that they had and
Yeah.
renovated it there.
So my vote would be to put the airport at 4.5 million at the bottom of the list, but that's just my vote.
No, that, I
Yeah.
actually noted that in, yeah.
That's right, where it is on mine too.
Okay.
So with the intent that maybe the city would pick up
Right.
the other 4.5
Yes.
on there.
I think that would have to be.
And I, these might adjust the priorities. So if we could just bring this list, I don't think number one's gonna change, doesn't appear.
So
So,
that sounds pretty solid here.
yeah, and then we go with that without the numbers and say that, well, there we are. 45 million.
But it would serve all of Albany County, so.
I mean,
On the 2018 ballot, was the city of Laramie's asked 42 million? Did I read that right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But they,
Got 11?
Yep.
Ours
Say we
was-
flip this
42,000 or 42 million, they got 64%.
And the beauty of an administrative building, whether it be a justice center administrative, that serves everybody in the county, not just city resident, not county. It
Mhm.
serves
Oh, no, yeah.
everybody. So.
Yeah, there's no arguing about which
Yeah,
part
which
of,
I think is,
which part of
is a
town,
good-
county, whatever.
yeah. It's a good use of the funds in my opinion, because it hits everybody. It's not just city residents or county residents. It's county-wide.
yeah.
I just see the numbers ratcheting up rather quickly on, and I don't know what the ask was in 2018, but
69.
it was 69 and okay, that's, so this is far more reasonable or balanced, I should say.
No, that's
No,
the city,
69 was the
county,
total.
and
Oh.
was the total and Rock River. So I'm not
Good-
sure. we're
good
gonna
idea
get this
there.
list.
Never mind, never mind.
A whole lot of money.
Well,
We're
and
gonna
it
get this
all,
list.
I mean, and you look at what, Tracy, how long did it take to collect that though? I mean,
8 years. Well, by the time
Yeah.
we're collected, it'll be 8 years. Which is not that long, really.
It's not, because people were having heart attacks over 10 years. So,
I think the original plan was 12 years. Well, look at the bonding schedule.
oh,
Yeah,
well,
so.
they were having over 10.
Yeah.
10.
10, yeah, I remember the discussion being 10 being
Yeah,
concerning, but then we had it for 12 to allow for
Yeah.
collections. and-
Yeah.
But we've had a lot of change in collections since then with the online purchases and other
yeah,
items.
that's been helpful.
Mhm. Jennifer, are we gonna at some point get a formal document from the state Supreme Court that says you will need to
Oh,
increase
another
space
courtroom.
by a certain date? Or is this just due to projections, here's what we may have going on?
So it's based, the Supreme Court does surveys every few years. They haven't done one in a while because they're implementing all the online file and serve things. So they were waiting the last I looked. I haven't looked to see if there's a new one. And then they prioritize it based on the number of cases and caseload per judge. So it changes every time something comes out. And then the Supreme Court goes to the legislature to ask for funding for however many new judgeships they're asking for. And then at that point, we know. The last one that I looked at, which I think came out in 22 or 3, we were third on the list at that time, but I don't know that there's been a new one since then.
So it's wait and see and
Yeah.
just be ready. Okay.
The update that I got when we did our walkthrough on Thursday from the district court is that they turned down Supreme Court last year for expansion.
They do regularly.
Yeah. So, the Supreme Court is looking at Albany County and has been the last 2-3 years. But it's been the court that,
We've never been on the top of the list. Most recently, we were third on the list. But unless the new one has come out, and I can look and see if I can find it real quick. But Albany County was third on the last one that came out, and I think they funded, or maybe we were fifth and they funded 2 that put us at third, something along those lines.
district court said that there was a request, but they've turned it down from the Supreme Court.
I know the Supreme Court has asked the legislature for funding, like I think they asked for funding. And honestly, this was 2 or 3 years ago when we were looking, they asked for funding for like 3 positions and got funded for 1. Albany County wasn't included in the 3 at that time.
I was just curious as to how that process transpired.
The state does the surveys on caseloads and things and then determines.
That becomes an unfunded mandate at that point.
Correct.
I think something we have to think about too, though, is whether we get another district court or not. We have outgrown our space and we are in too many buildings, the upkeep.
Oh, no, I
I have
agree.
outgrown my election space by hundreds of people. So I mean, regardless of whether we have to have another district court, something I think has to be done regarding the space. So I think it's definitely a conversation to have, but I think whether we are mandated to have another court or not, space is an issue and it's definitely something we have to address. Because we're not getting any smaller in Albany County, we're only gonna grow. So. Yeah, and we have to look at that either way, no?
I brought up on the screen the history that I can find back to 1989 specific purpose tax for how that was split. And then down at the bottom is just our county portion, how we utilize those by entity. I think I sent this out at the last work session.
I remember there's a whole bunch down below that I didn't see.
I think I
So how do you determine the total amount? Is that just from the number of projects and then you look at total amount and then figure out how many years to collect?
roughly.
Roughly.
So Todd Bishop, he's been very instrumental in helping us formulate the ballot. Because if any entities bond, we have to also include in there the bonding costs because that has to be part of the specific purpose tax. And so he's aware of all of our projects. I don't know. I think he has been in contact with, Director Wade at the city. But it's really kind of more like what kind of appetite the community has. His recommendation is definitely do not go over 100 million. Yeah. Which to me sounds horrifying.
Oh,
I mean, not in the sense of, as a taxpayer, that's a lot of money for my government to spend. Yeah. Or continue taxing me on, but
geez, yeah, I can't even imagine approaching 100 million.
yeah, crazy.
Yeah, a little bit.
I remember 65 million being people like,
Oh, they were,
yeah,
yeah, they were.
yeah.
It's pretty.
But you used the same courthouse for 100 years, right?
Yeah.
So at some point, you have to invest in yourself.
I know, but what they look at that number and they,
Yeah.
But you have to think that's 3 generations away, and 4 generations away. So
Yeah,
yeah,
they got the money worth out of this
yeah.
facility. Yeah.
Most definitely. I mean, a lot of the things we have here at the county are still from, the 90s. Or like our software that we just upgraded, that was from the 90s.
Yeah.
We're now almost complete with the upgrade of that and it's been an amazing difference, but there's a lot of things like in my office, we live every 8 years in boxes. The boxes stacked everywhere. That's, I don't know, it drives me nuts. I hate clutter and it's clutter and it. But if we had storage space that wasn't in the basement, yeah,
right, yeah.
it'd be a different thing. But there's just things that we can improve upon as a county. But whether our constituents want to see those improvements or not, that's a different thing. Yeah.
I guess too, we're in this position, we're prepared that if this doesn't pass the ballot, then we're still,
Where we're at.
yeah, we're still where we're at and we're still having to plan for additional space.
next
and
time.
yes.
Yes.
So
And I think it's 11 months before you can put it back on the ballot again. Or something like that.
Right, yeah, there's a period
waiting
of time.
period of time, yeah.
and is it only 2/3 of the entities have to agree?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And all are equal.
Correct.
Okay.
And the timing of this, I have not been able to calculate. There's a possibility we could end up paying it off, the current tax, the 2018 tax, where we would want to consider maybe doing a May election, which I don't know that we have budgeted. I did budget for it. I did budget for that. Even though you were mad at me.
I was mad at you, but I did do it.
Better safe than sorry.
So are we
just
trying to
honest.
time the dollar amount so it's more convenient for your office or?
No,
Okay.
I budgeted for judges and things in the case
Okay.
that we had to, because it would be paid out prior to the end of the fiscal year, so, like for ballots and things like that.
So if this should pass, is it in the time frame that it's not gonna cause a big deal on
With the gap.
the gap?
We're dropping
The
down.
gap, that's the, yeah.
That's the biggest thing. I have to sit back and look at where we are collected now. Like I said, I haven't got that done. Things take a little longer with my hand, but that's on my to-do list. But I'm thinking the last time I did calculate, I think it was July, which that would make a May ballot more advantageous to just seamlessly transfer into the new specific purpose.
Right, that's what I was concerned about,
Now,
because that
push it-
causes a terrible,
Push it to August, then you're gonna.
Then we drop down for, if we're fully collected, we drop down to the 5% for a quarter, and then we'll have to pick back up after that other quarter,
right?
which
For businesses. and
isn't the
things.
worst thing. We did that, I think, at the,
I can
2010.
remember throughout time that that's happened.
yeah. Pushing this onto the November ballot, we'll have the general purpose fifth penny
And the lodging.
and the lodging
Back on,
tax. So there would be, if we had to do that, that's 3 taxes on one ballot, which I wouldn't do that. That's brutal.
No, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And given the
Especially-
length in the history of the specific purpose tax ballots, it'll be like a 4-page ballot. I
Don't know, we're not having a 4-page ballot.
Well, that's what we,
Nobody's gonna read it.
Caleb,
That's
that's what we were
miserable.
trying to help with this.
We're not having a 4-page ballot, we're not having a 2-page ballot. That was a nightmare.
Nightmare. Yes, that was.
That's a nightmare.
Lengthy ballot. As I send it to you guys, and you'll see that all the streets and everything.
So does anybody have anything else that they need to discuss so we can continue down our,
Do we need a motion
Agenda.
to set the priorities?
I don't think so, I think just
I think
Tracy's
what
got
you-
them and.
Got it.
Done
I mean-
today at least gives you a place to go
Yeah.
into the meeting on
Okay.
the
Yeah.
25th.
Let me bring up just one last peek at the list and make sure it's reads how you want it. All showing up on there.
I don't care to have the priority list yet. I don't think we're there. Just a list, so I don't know that we need to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But that's just my thought on it.
Well, that could just be your project number.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I'm gonna put it back.
okay.
put it back, we like numbers in front.
And we could reiterate that at
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
meeting, that this is just our list, this is how they.
We don't have to. We could compress number 2 there and just say county building trust 4.5 million. And if people want to have a conversation, then we can have a conversation.
That's true. I will, for a printed copy for everybody to have that attends the meeting, I will take that off. But we'll have it in our own records.
I did also just find, as an update on the Supreme Court's website, the last time they did the weighted workload was 2021.
So they're due for another one.
Well, they are, when I talked to them, I think it was either the fall, it must have been the fall of 22. They were waiting until file and serve had gone into place because it was gonna change. They wanted to see how that was gonna affect workloads and how that was gonna change things. File and serve is still not entirely in place. So I don't know if they've just put off doing weighted workloads as they work through that project or what the plan there is, but The last one that they did was 21. And that's when we were third. After the ones that got funded and didn't get funded.
So
Yeah.
move on to item 10 of the regular agenda. Present for approval FY 25 and FY 26 Community Juvenile Service Board Grant Agreement application for funding from July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2026. Jennifer.
Good morning. I'm filling in for Bailey while she's at her class today. This is an additional $29,000 to Community Juvenile Services Board on an existing grant.
Do we need it or is it available? And we need it.
It will go to Big Brothers Big Sisters, I believe, for the diversion program is what the intention is, but yes,
There's money available that we're asking for.
Yes.
So I'm just trying to understand.
I believe that's accurate.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Any questions?
Oh, she's not even on. Okay,
No, she had to get off.
gotcha. Well, I move that we approve the fiscal year 25, fiscal year 26 Community Juvenile Service Board CJSB grant amendment application for funding from July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2026.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, carries. Item 11, present for approval funding agreement between the Board of Commissioners of the County of Albany, Wyoming, and the Laramie Railroad Depot, Lincoln Community Center, Laramie Plains Civic Center, Pilot Hill Incorporated, Robbie's House, Safe Project, Skate Laramie, Unaccompanied Student Initiative, United Way of Albany County, and Volunteers of America for the FY 26 Community Partner Funding.
So these are the agreements that came in. I think we have done one batch of them. This is another batch of them for when we got the documents signed back from all of those entities that Chairman Jones read.
I'll move that we approve the funding for agreement between the Board of Commissioners of Albany County, the Laramie Railroad Depot, Lincoln Community Center, Laramie Plains Civic Center, Pilot Hill Inc., Robbie's House, Safe Project, Skate Laramie, Unaccompanied Student Initiative, United Way of Albany County, and Volunteers of America for fiscal year 26 Community Partnership Funding.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Item 12, present for approval agreement between the Board of Commissioners of the Albany County, Wyoming, and Long Technologies Incorporated for HVAC services maintenance for the Albany County Courthouse. Jennifer.
Good morning again. So this, Anthony called out to get bids from 3 different companies who do this kind of work. The only one who responded was Long, who is the current provider that is doing work. One of the companies, there's a memo in there, one of the companies isn't available to take it on, and Johnson Controls, which is the other big services and controls company in the area. He was never able to get a hold of someone. He left messages, was told he would get callbacks, and he did not. So what we have there is the agreement with Long for the next 2 years.
Oh, and it pains me to do this.
But I'll do it for you.
I move we approve the agreement between
The Board of Commissioners of the County of Albany, Wyoming, and Long Technologies for HVAC services and maintenance for the Albany County Courthouse.
Thank you, Commissioner Gosar. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item 13, present for approval emergency resolution 2025-001, resolution declaring partial fire restriction and ban on the use of fireworks in the area of Albany County Fire District Number 1.
Chad is on.
Commissioners.
More.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'll quickly start with a poem in this last week. That ended up being 157 acres, and at this point we have that in patrol status, which is to say we don't anticipate any further growth or significant activity. So that's all good news up there, and that's where we're at with that. Moving on to the restrictions, I just wanted to touch on what the parameters are that we we look at when we go into restrictions, we kind of try to do this objectively and science-based. So it's, it has some standing. And just quickly, I'll go through the 7 parameters that we evaluate when we look at doing this type of thing. And the first parameter is the 1,000-hour fuel moistures, and we look at their contents to see if they're below 9% or 10% less than 8,000 feet. We also look at the energy release component, and that's a measure of burn indices and weather and so forth that tells us what the likelihood that a fire is going to be resistant to suppression. We also look at the live fuel moisture content and whether the sagebrush is 90% or less. Some other things that are a little bit more subjective are whether fires are impacting available resources or the areas receiving a higher than normal occurrence of human-caused fires. We look at adverse fire weather predictions and the Palmer drought indicators. So when we review those 7 items, we look at if we check the box on 4 of those, we consider entering into restrictions, and we do in fact for the southern part of the county at this point. And that's why we use that political boundary as kind of a convenient way. The Medicine Bow Route National Forest has gone into restrictions on the Medbow, which would be included in that area, as well as the BLM and state game and fish. So we're going to line up ours with their restrictions. So it's kind of doesn't matter what side of the line you're on, but it's all the same restrictions. Is there any questions on that portion?
So Chad, when you're just talking this red shaded area on the map. So the southern end of the county is going into fire restriction, or that just designates fire district 1? Both. Okay. Never mind. Jennifer just answered the question for me.
Did we lose you, Chad?
No.
He's muted.
He's muted. Chad, you're muted.
All right, I'm back. So the reason why we're not going in on the northern portion of the county is it doesn't meet all these parameters just yet. Also, we for better or for worse, we had a case study with that Reese Mountain fire, and it did not put much of a fight. It didn't really resist suppression based on the fuels and stuff we were looking at, and we were able to relatively quickly contain that. With the combination of the resources that are available and the weather conditions, it wasn't much of a thing. We know based on some of the science that fire is unlikely going to be, the Britannia or the Arapahoe. It's going to be a much smaller event, and in which case, those are going to happen and not necessarily necessary to have restrictions on. So that being said, the restrictions on private lands are essentially not all that restrictive, is what I like to say, and they're not a fire ban. So I really don't use the ban that much but rather restrictions, because it really restricts the use of fireworks, incendiary targets, and open burning. Those are our main things. And then it has some guidelines and some restrictions in terms of if you're going to be doing welding or using ATVs or things along those lines. So just kind of looking through here, I don't think that there's anything that's different than other years. This is a thing that we try not to do every year, but sometimes it just the conditions require it. So these are my recommendations right now. Also, special thanks to Karen and Jennifer for helping me assemble this, because I'm in the fight like much of my colleagues are right now. So we'll be back around when we get a chance. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, thanks for that. The 7 indicators, and I appreciate that. I wrote most of them down. I'll email you the ones that I didn't get, but I think that's really an important part for people to know. So if somebody asks me, then I have those 7 metrics that you guys are monitoring, and it's not just Chad thinks it should be no fireworks. So
Well, and I've used those, and that definitely helps the public in having an idea. Because otherwise it's just catch as catch can. So thank you very much, Chad.
So I move to approve the emergency resolution 2025-001, a resolution declaring partial fire restriction and ban on the use of fireworks in the area of Albany County Fire District number 1.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Item
Thank you,
14,
Commissioner.
thank you very much, Chad. Present for approval, final acceptance of the county road pavement chip and seal project and direct the clerk to advertise for final payment to Intermountain Slurry Seal Incorporated, the balance of $122,496.92 due on the 31st day following the first advertising. The final cost of the contract was $2,449,900 I'm gonna start over on that. $2,449,938.40.
Good morning, Commissioners. Intermountain Slurry finished the chip seal. I think it turned out really well. I'm really pleased with the results. One thing we did different this time is we added a fog seal at the top, which I think has helped keep the chips in place a lot better. And then on our road that goes out to Lake Caddy, we added the fog lanes or whatever, basically the white lines on the edge. And I think that made a significant change also, according to our.
Very good.
So basically, this is just approval so we can start the 41-day retainage fee clock.
I'd move that we approve the final acceptance of the Albany County pavement chip seal project and direct the clerk to advertise for final payment to Intermountain Slurry Seal Inc. The balance of $122,496.92 due on the 41st day. Following the first advertising, the final cost of the contract was $2,449,938.40.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Rob, thank you. Item 15, make an appointment to the Albany County Library.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve David Harsey to the Albany County Library.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Item 16, approve payroll and vouchers for August 2025.
Move to approve the payroll and vouchers for August 2025.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Seeing no further business before the Board of County Commissioners, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for attending both online and in person.
Kate, you missed the exciting part.